example. I mean, with Scott doing these cuts this way, I mean, he's supposed to be the business savvy guy. I mean, would he want to cut his any business that he owns by 40% overnight without having any notice of any kind?
Well,
we actually met with several provider groups.
Correct.
Weeks before this happened. We let them know what was going on, and APD held a conference call, so there was a lot of advance notice.
No.
Wait 1 second. Okay, let me
On that conference call, there was no mention of that. I was on that conference call.
the various meetings we've had, though, all the providers that have been in the meeting knew all of the numbers that we've been talking about, had talked to the House, had talked to the Senate. We're very aware of what we were looking at.
Sunrise lobbyists were there with us. Sunrise has known about this.
I don't think anybody has an issue that the deficit was there. There's nobody that didn't know about the deficit. It's 15%. It's not a 15% cut. It may be a 15% cut across the board on the rates, but you've taken the agency rates
and brought them down to the solo rates.
Solo rates. All those people have overhead, and
so I mean they're cut by like 40-45%.
I got people 30-40% they're talking about cuts. How can anybody run a business like that? And that being said, when we're done and you do all this, who's going to provide the service that they're
This
going?
is a very difficult situation for everyone, but there's also a lot of hyperbole out there. There's a lot of rhetoric that isn't helping. I met with the APD staff today. They told me that they have had 10 providers total, 2 of whom were support coordinators, say that they were going to discontinue providing services. 10. And when I was at APD, we had over 10,000 providers. So only 10 have notified the agency. The other thing that I did hear was that APD did screw up with ABC, and the rates or the billing system, they did it wrong. They added an additional reduction, so the rates that people first saw were much lower than they should be. So they fixed that, and so there's been now an adjustment to the rates that will be paid. I also met with some providers this afternoon who told me that we can absorb this, but we can't absorb it going forward. And these were large providers, ICF, group home providers, down in South Florida where the cost of living is more expensive. But I did get assurances from them that they could get through this. They want to work with us.
The House, the budget is there to cover the deficit, to cover the money. It's on the back end of the budget. It's there. The only thing we have to do is get the Senate to agree to it or come up to it. And there's no reason to do this.
Well, what do we do
and then
about
moving forward,
we need to, but moving forward is the big question, because moving forward, even if we did cover the deficit this year, at the rate of growth that we have experienced over the past year, we will exceed our appropriation again. And the chances of the House and the Senate giving us more money next year is pretty slim, because I know that in speaking to the leadership there, they're fed up with this program because it can't stay within its budget.
So what do they want to do?
And what do we do?
You want to pull the plug on and just send everybody home?
I think that is there a way that people can live? Can families live within their means? Can families not ask so much of the state and help us out so that we can serve more people? We have 19,000 people on the waiting list waiting for services, and we
I thought that was part of the I budget coming in. Where the I budget was gonna.
It doesn't contemplate the waiting list.
Well, and
at all.
even the tiers was because what happened with the tiers, the reason they didn't work, and we said they weren't going to work. We told everybody they weren't going to work. I don't even know if you were there at the time. Were they just implemented? You just I can remember you just left.
It was a provider group that proposed the tiers. It did not come from the agency.
I don't know who it was because I had nothing to do with it.
It was ARC.
And I agree.
Can families, though, help and say, you know what, we can live without this or that so that other people can also get served? I mean, can we get people to everyone put some skin in the game?
Well, I think honestly, a lot of people, families are putting the skin in the game. They're the ones that are being hit the worst, because you're looking at these budgets. You talk about we've not increased the APD budget when the money was flush and it was all there, was almost $1 billion. Now it's down to $800 million, and that's before this.
But they're going to spend $1 billion this year.
True though.
Yes, but
yeah, I know the money's not there.
But the spending
is.
They're spending that much.
I understand.
And we still have 19,000 people on the waiting list.
I know that.
So what we want help. We're asking for help of, besides just asking for more money, what can we do to make this a program where we're not coming back and having these discussions every year, because it's not going to get better.
The governor could back off, make him look like a hero, because right now his approval rating's in the toilet.
and that doesn't guarantee that we have the money. If we run out of money, then every provider is done. We can't afford to pay. There's no service.
Is that an option?
What I'm hearing today is I've got 80 or 60 group homes or 70 group homes are going to close anyway, from what the governor did last Friday. So aren't we doing the exact same thing by doing it that short and not?
I mean, exactly. And then you got all these
other.
other provider companies that can't do certain services now. You know, they can't afford to pay their employees to do respite. They can't afford to pay their employees to do companion. You know, minimum wage. It's not something that they can keep doing and stay in business. They're looking for new ways to try and just survive and keep the lights on and keep doing services. You know, I've talked to so many different people now, and it's horrible. And so many people are going out of business, whether they have their 30-day notice yet or not. You know, it is happening. And what they're doing is they're trying to hang on to the last thread before they have to put in a 30-day notice. But there is several that already have put in 30-day notices on certain services. Maybe not everything, but certain services that they can't even afford to do anymore. And, you know, this is not just a trickle effect. It's going to become an avalanche within just a couple of weeks. And it's just going to hurt the people that we serve. Is there any type of a guarantee that after this 90 days, rates are going to go back to normal? I mean, is there any guarantee to that?
I'm sure there is.
Because nobody believes that that's going to happen.
Well, the emergency rule is only in effect for 90 days. So yes, I mean, the guarantee is that we don't have legal authority to keep the rates at 15% cut beyond 90 days because it expires.
So does that mean the agencies will go back to, you know, the agency pay?
It will depend on... It will depend on what's in the legislation that passes. That's up to the House and Senate. I mean,
Right.
that is
So
out of our hands.
let's say the House and Senate, let's just say they come up with the House and they agree with the House, and the deficit's gone for this situation that occurred. Do you think the governor would be willing to reverse this if we can get the Senate to come up to what the House had, so that we're not in this situation short term, and then look at what they fund for next year? Because my understanding, the House has an increase, and it comes out almost cost neutral because ICFDD rates are cut a little bit. But the Senate, obviously, if that goes through, we're 90 million short again. We're even worse than we are. So
I guess the question I would ask is if the Senate were to agree, which people would you take that money from?
The House already has.
No, but in the Senate, which people would you take that money from? Which programs would you cut to get?
That's a good question. I have no clue.
Because you talk about this population, but we have a lot of populations that we serve, and they're all equally valuable and important to us. And
Right.
we spend about $1 billion a year on just this waiver every year. But
Right.
in addition to that, we have people we have babies, we have children, we have elderly, we have people with other disabilities that don't have waivers.
I understand.
So
you know,
we have to be fair to every Florida citizen, and we have to try and meet everyone's needs to the extent that government is capable. But we can't do everything.
this legislature, the next legislature, they need to fund at least appropriate amount to cover who's there and who's on the waiting list. They've never done it. The only reason they did it the last time is because of the lawsuit. And now we're sitting here 10 years later in the same boat we were 10 years ago.
And if they did,
And
they
that's a
would have to
separate
cut
issue.
someone else.
No, they just have to raise taxes, and they're not willing to do that. That's the bottom line. I mean, there's a way to get more money, and I'm a Republican, okay? But I'll tell you what, I'm willing to pay more taxes for my kid so that she's not kicked out of her house. And I bet you 90% of the Republicans in the state that have kids or adults that are disabled or elderly, if they knew what the money was being used for, they would approve it. The question I've got is, if we've got the House and the Senate agrees to do something to help with this situation short term, is the governor's office willing to reverse the cut? That's what I would ask.
And that's a hard question to answer because we don't see what their plan is. Like James says, we don't know.
I'm talking
where
about for
they're
the
cutting.
short term to
Right.
cut the deficit.
We don't know where that money is coming from, though. It's not like there's.
Well, my understanding
pot
is a
of
lot of the
money.
money that the House has in came from 4 cancer research centers. Money. Moffitt, it was published.
That is the
There's like
understanding.
$82 million in the back end.
Which will help
to
take care of the
to
deficit
cover
for
the
this year
deficit
and part of it for
and
next
part of
year.
next year, and then there's additional money in the House budget. There's actually an increase in some areas, but there's a decrease in the ICF rates. I think ICFDD rates like 2.5%.
So people are having a big problem not understanding why they're not going to allow that to happen. You know, if there is funding in there, if they just pass it and let it go through to go ahead and take care of this for this year and part of next year, why is it not just being done?
Well, one of the reasons the House has more money is because they took money from education. So, I mean,
Right.
all
Well, and
taxpayers.
again, we know the whole process. It goes back and forth, and we have two. So the question is, though, if we can get the Senate to come up to the House, are you willing to go back? Are we willing to go back and talk to the governor about reversing this decision or doing something to cut the impact of the decision, maybe lessen the decision if we know everybody can agree, just like you're asking us if we'll all agree on our end, if you can get the governor's office to agree with the Senate and the House on what the solution is short term.
Well, I mean, what can the provider and the constituent community?
Well, you've already implemented cuts, so I mean, you pretty much.
But you're asking us to reverse them. So what can you bring? Can you bring something to the table to help mitigate?
I mean, you tell me what. I mean, I can go back and say, hey, if we're willing to do a lesser cut, or I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to avoid people from closing their doors. That's when I'm hearing 30, 40 group homes closing, I'm sure that's not what the intent was of this, and you didn't expect that kind of response. And maybe you think it's not true, but I'm telling you that's what we're hearing is happening, and people.
Yeah, I mean, I can send you stats on all these different places that are, if you get almost to the brink of shutting down.
And we have not heard that from the agency has not been notified. And I literally,
well, honestly,
I've been meeting with groups all day long, and I have not heard that from a single
You can't expect the
constituent
agency to
group.
get notified after a week just because the agency notified.
But I'm also
every
meeting with provider groups, and I haven't heard that yet from anyone.
Okay, which provider groups?
Yeah, I'd love to have the list of people that are saying it ain't going to affect them.
Because everybody I've talked to saying they
People
are.
are saying it's going to affect them, but I have not had a single call of a provider saying my doors will be closed. I've had providers say that if the 15% cut is continued on, then yes, maybe later on I'll have to close my doors.
Well, I can guarantee that your phone will start ringing off the hook with people telling you that.
And I'd like to see their documentation too. I mean, we do want to work with folks,
Okay.
but
disabilities need their money to live. Parents, our children with disabilities need their money so that we can make a living and provide for our children.
They won't do that. There'll be so damn many of us in their faces they couldn't do their job. The difference today from any previous rally I've been to, when we're done, everybody goes to get stuff that needs real quick and gets in through security, and that can take a while. We're going to all meet at the governor's office at 1 o'clock, and he's going to go to That's our goal. I want to say a few things before we get into that and go through that. As Sarah said, my name is Ven Sequenzia. I'm Amy's dad. This is Amy right here on my side. She's 27 years old, has autism and epilepsy. She's been flying at APD for a number of years, and she was on the original waiting list that everybody knows about has been around a while. The same waiting list that went away all the mysteriously. Now we have 5,000 more than we had last time. So, she's going to be affected by these cuts. She's already been notified. Fortunately for her, I don't think she'll lose her house, but I've been getting calls and emails and speaking to different providers. And I'm hearing
Let's see the signs, guys.
They're starting with education and they're moving into disability. Whereas here they did the disability and then they're going to do
Can I say? Hold on, let me put that on. No!
We're still waiting for somebody to come out, guys. Just be patient. We're trying to wait for somebody to come out to speak to us.
Giving victory ceremony, sure as he don't have that right
I got boots. Thank you. Excuse
This is the line that is at the governor's office. It is waiting all the way back to the entrance of the Capitol, waiting for someone to speak to us from the governor's office. Go ahead and hold your sign up. Let people see that.
director for the ARC of Florida. You know, this morning I just got a phone call from one of my members in the Panhandle, and they have a young man with autism that they can no longer safely serve. And they had given notice to the agency. And we hear the van's coming tomorrow to pick him up and take him back to the state institution. You know what I've got to say about that? It's just, hell no, we won't go. We're not going back to the days when we were institutionalized. We're not going to stand for it. And you know, our governor does have a fiscal responsibility to the state. He also has responsibilities to Florida's most vulnerable citizens. And he needs to take both of the responsibilities equally seriously. And that's what I've got to say about the situation.
Thank you.